continue our Channel 99 interviews tonight and into the coming weeks as we remember Jesus' crucifixion. So we are going to be, over the next few weeks, meeting some unique individuals who have their own personal perspective on Jesus' crucifixion. Now, each of these individuals comes from a different part of the country, a different background. And as we talk to each of these people, we hope to get to know them, but then also, what we really pray is that each of us will grasp a better personal, deeper understanding of just how Jesus' crucifixion affects each one of us, grabs hold of each one of us. So as we begin our Lenten series of interviews, our first interviewee is Simon from Cyrene. Simon, welcome.
Thank you.
Would you please tell us, say hello to our folks here, but then tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am Simon, and I've come from Cyrene, a town that was the capital of the country you call today Libya. The country got its start, the city got its start about the time that Jeremiah was prophesying, about 600 years before Jesus was born. And while it was a Greek-speaking city, for about a couple hundred years there were Greek-speaking Jews who were part of that country as well, that lived in Cyrene. And so that's where I come from. I also lived in Israel for a while, and I was coming in from the country, coming in toward Jerusalem for the Passover, and that's when I saw it. Saw three men, each carrying the cross on which they would be crucified. And none of them was moving very quickly. They were going slowly, and the soldiers were behind them, poking them with the spear every once in a while to keep them going. And then, as they were getting closer to me, I backed up off the road so that they had room to pass. And just as they got to me, one of them collapsed right in front of me. The soldier kicked him to get up and to get moving again. But he was completely exhausted. It was clear he had been beaten badly and couldn't go any further. And the Roman soldier looked right at me and said, "You pick up his cross." I couldn't believe it. "What, you mean me?" "Yeah, you," he says, "and make it quick."
Then what happened?
Well, I tell you what, I was really shocked. My first reaction was to be scared, because you know, if you anger a Roman soldier, your life is probably not going to last much longer. But then as I started carrying that heavy beam, it was anger that filled me. I was angry at the Romans' tyranny over us, that they could make us do stuff like that. I hadn't done anything wrong, and so that I had to carry that cross was a terrible thing, it seemed to me. And so as I was trudging along, it was anger. But that changed. That feeling changed. And after a while, it was a strange thing. People were looking at me like I was the one who had done something wrong. Well, they saw me carrying the cross, you know. And I can just imagine they were wondering what terrible things I had done to deserve to be crucified. Of course, I'd looked at people that way myself, and so I could figure that that's what they're thinking.
So what did you do, Simon, when you reached the top of the hill?
When I got to the place where they were crucified? Well, my first urge was just to turn tail and get out of there, to run, because I didn't want the Roman soldier wanting me to do something else yet. But I'd already done this conscription, and I don't know, it was a mixture of things. Jesus was so different from anybody else I'd ever seen crucified. It was kind of a mix of pity and curiosity that made me stay, and I'm glad I did.
How do you mean you were glad that you stayed?
I don't mean I was glad to watch the crucifixion. It's an awful thing to see. So terrifying, just makes your stomach turn. No, I wasn't happy to see it, but it changed my life.
And how? How did that happen?
You know, I stood and watched. It was an amazing thing. I told you Jesus didn't act like the others. Others would curse the soldiers. Some would curse God. Jesus didn't do any of that. While he's hanging up there on the cross, he asks that they be forgiven. While he's there, he talks with those two others who are being crucified with him. He tells one of them that that very day he'll be with him in paradise. And then it's just strange. A lot of strange things happened. But I remember especially how dark it got. It's unusually dark, right in the middle of the day. I was just trying to make sense of all that was going on.
So then how did you find out what was going on?
Well, a few days later, I bumped into some of his disciples. And they told me that Jesus had come back to life. Amazing. They were certain of it. There was no doubt. They'd eaten and drunk with him. They knew that he was alive. And then 50 days after Jesus had come back to life, on Pentecost, I was with Peter and some of the other disciples when Peter got up and he was proclaiming good news about what God had done. The Spirit worked in my heart. I was brought to faith. And I and a whole bunch of other people were baptized that very day.
So your account is very interesting. But it started with such trouble and pain for you, really. I'm just looking at the notes here. But then, at the end, you were glad.
Well, you know, some of his disciples have said that Jesus told us that we must take up our cross and follow him. And, of course, I did that literally, took up his cross even. But, you know, we must go through suffering, but we're glad to do it on Jesus' behalf after all he's done for us.
Well, you know, carrying the cross of Jesus, as you said, made a permanent change in you, didn't it?
Oh, changed me, changed my family. My son Rufus was a leader in the Christian church in Rome. And, of course, it changed me too. My life would never be the same. You know, I came to know Jesus and how he picked up the burden for me. I carried his cross for a little ways, and that was a burden, but nothing like the weight that he held for me. He's the one who took the burden of my sin. He's the one who really hefted the stuff that I couldn't handle myself. He took my sin, my guilt on that cross and took it away from me.
Simon, your story is amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us or any questions you might have for me?
Well, in my time, there was a lot of persecution. How is it in this day and age?
Well, unfortunately, Simon, in some countries, there is great persecution to this day. But fortunately, in our country, in our time, persecution is very rare.
Oh, that's great. So people must just be shouting it from the rooftops all about what Jesus has done.
Simon, I'm quite sad to tell you that's not exactly the truth. That many people, many of us who are followers of Jesus or claim to be followers of Jesus, people can't really even tell the difference between us and those who aren't.
You mean Christians just acting like the sinful world?
Sad to say, but yes, it happens very often.
Don't they know what Jesus has done for them?
Of course they do. But that is one of the reasons why we have you here, why we're interviewing you. Your personal perspective helping us understand how you were changed and how you now live. This is what we want to bring to our people who hear us so that they can, that maybe really reflect upon their lives.
Well, I admit, when I was first carrying that cross and people were looking at me, it was humiliating. I was ashamed. But the more I thought about it, that was one of the greatest honors in my life, to be able to carry that cross for Jesus. And a couple things keep going through my mind. One is, after all that Jesus has done for me, how can I keep on going back to sin? How can I keep sinning against him and hurting him like that? The second is, after Jesus has taken that load off of me, the load of sin and guilt, I know that there are other people who have that same guilt, and I don't want them to die with that. I don't want them to have to carry that, and so I want to tell them and tell as many people as I can. I want people to know the good news that Jesus died and rose again, that their sins can be taken away, that he's taken the load for them.
So yes, you carried the burden of Jesus' cross, but that's nothing compared to him, Jesus, who carried all the burden of sin. So this is what lets you deal with all the hassles of your life.
You know, even when the going gets tough, when we have to carry crosses, we know that Jesus has carried so much more for us. That's right.
So then you are saying, as I reflect upon what you're saying, that holds true for us too then, doesn't it?
Sure, there are people back in my day and people in this day, both of whom need to hear the good news about Jesus, and he's taken a load for everybody.
Simon, thank you so much for coming and sharing your unique personal experience with us. We surely do appreciate hearing it straight from you, and we pray that you stay always close to Jesus. Thank you very much, Simon.
Now with the interview over, our worship continues as we bring our offerings to the Lord. As we do so, we ask that each worshiper, whether member or guest, to please sign the friendship pads found at the end of each pew.